Yoga basics, pigeon pose. Lots of times we see pigeon pose in our yoga flows, especially in beginner classes, and they're not always taught super safely. So I want to teach you today how to do pigeon pose very, very safely. Remember that bodies will look very different in pigeon pose. This is one of those poses that is largely based on your own individual anatomy, so try not to look around when doing this pose, especially in the yoga room, in a big class. Just listen to your own body and listen to the cueing. Often we start pigeon pose from downward facing dog. Today I want to start from tabletop. You can start it really any way you want. Traditionally we start from downward facing dog like this, lift the leg up and then swing it through. The reason why we do this is that for a lot of people, they don't have the hip flexor strength or the flexibility to bring the leg forward. So we use momentum. We lift the leg up and flick it through with momentum to get the leg where we want to. Unfortunately, when we do this, we often end up with misalignment, and that could cause injury. So instead today, let's start on all fours. So I'm in tabletop, knees under hips, hands underneath shoulders. And then I'm just gonna slide, I'll start with the right leg. I'm gonna slide my right knee to meet my right wrist, okay? So when we do pigeon pose, we don't want the knee in the middle of the mat. We want it on the side. So my right knee slides to meet my right wrist, and then I'm just gonna wiggle my shin forward as much as it wants to go. So notice I did not use my hand to pull my leg forward. This is another common issue that we see in yoga classes is someone will try to get their shin parallel to the mat and they'll pull it forward. Why is this dangerous and why is doing pigeon misaligned dangerous? Because our knee is a hinge joint, okay? The knee joint only wants to do this, like a door hinge. The knee does not want to twist. So when we misalign our pigeon, what we inadvertently do by pulling the leg in is actually twist the knee, okay? Because it's already bent, and then if we pull the knee, or the leg, past our hip external rotation point, what happens is because the knee is a smaller joint, the knee will take the brunt of the force, and then that will result in a knee injury over time, or sometimes right away. We have to be super careful. So back to tabletop. I'm here, I bring my right knee to touch my right wrist, and then without using my hands, I just shimmy my shin forward as much as it wants to go. Now, as you can see, my hips are not square. This is another common beginner misalignment we see, is that people will lean to one hip or the other. So I've shimmied my shin forward, and now I'm gonna look behind me and just center my foot. Once that's there, I'm gonna use my back foot like a step to extend backwards. See that? So now I've gone into the full extension of my back hip flexor and my back leg. What's happened though is I'm still leaning a little bit onto the left hip. So energetically, using my muscles and not using my hands, I'm going to pull my right hip back and my left hip forward. That also realigns the knee. In this way now, I am at the peak of my hip flexibility in terms of external rotation. My hip is also in flexion. So my back leg is in hip extension, my front leg is in hip external rotation and hip flexion. Excuse me while I throw a rock for this puppy. So from here, scoop in your belly. And the reason why we zip in our belly is so that we don't put pressure on the lower back. So if I was to let all these muscles go, do you notice how my spine arced a little bit more? My lower back had a bigger arch. So instead what I'm going to do is pull in and up through my belly, pull in and up through my pelvic floor muscles so that my lower back is lengthened. I'm gonna inhale, roll the shoulders back, open my heart, and then exhale, walk my hands forward, starting with the elbows. For some people, the elbows on the ground is enough. This is enough, the peak of their flexibility. You can even stack your fists and put your forehead on your fists. If you can handle more, if it feels good for you, you can walk your hands all the way forward. Belly can sink to the mat and the forehead could come to your mat. Stay here for quite a few breaths because it feels delightful. And then when you're ready, let's safely exit. So we'll slowly walk up with the hands. The hands will come back underneath the shoulders, scoop in the belly. I'm going to tuck my back toes under and lift my back foot. So now using the strength of my hands and my foot in the back, I can lift up, either back into downward facing dog, or I can just come into my child's pose. So let's try this now on the left side. So I'm in tabletop, hands underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. Slide the left knee to meet the left wrist, and then just shimmy the leg out as much as it wants to go. Now look behind, center your back leg, and then step on your back toes to extend your leg as much as you can. So now from here, I'm in full extension of my back hip. To evenly distribute the weight, I'll back up my left sitting bone. So I think about backing my left butt up. Remember that song? Girl, you look good. Why don't you back that ass up? That's what I think of every time I do pigeon pose. So slowly back it up. And now I feel the nice big stretch in my hips. Zip in through my belly and through my pelvic floor. So basically I'm pulling up and in through my midline. To inhale, lift the heart. And then exhale, walk down to the elbows. Or if it feels good, all the way down to the belly, forehead on the mat. Take a few breaths. And whenever you're ready, you can emerge from your pigeon pose. Back feet tuck. Stretch the back leg up, press into the hands, and downward dog, or back to your tabletop. So that, my friends, excuse me for the mud on my face from the puppy. So that, my friends, is pigeon pose, or Eka Pada Raja Kapotasana. Eka Pada means one-footed, Raja is king, Kapotasana, pigeon pose. Eka Pada Raja Kapotasana, one-footed pose. Thanks for joining me.